this is one of the few professions that's a cycle, and every September is a rebirth. Let it go. Whatever happened last year, whatever didn't go as planned, whoever. So you get a reset. You get a reset every September. And so I would say take the reset and then go from there.
This is Teaching Today, brought to you by the Center for the Professional Education of Teachers at Teachers College, Columbia University. In conversation with teachers, school leaders, and researchers, we are dedicated to breaking down the problems, policies, and promising practices that define teaching today. Uniting theory and practice, CPET promotes rigorous and relevant scholarship and is committed to making excellent education accessible worldwide through personalized professional development.
Hey, Roberta.
Hey, Charisse.
Can you believe it's almost summer?
Yes.
I guess it's been kind of a long year in some ways.
Long and short, right? At the same time, a blink of an eye, it goes by, and yet it feels like we've been doing it day in and day out and day in and day out and just week after week after week. Yeah, I'm ready for summer.
Well, I think that this series has been like the perfect way to take us into summer. You know, we talked about a mile in my shoes with teachers and teacher leaders, and today we're bringing on the principals to figure out what it's like to actually be responsible for a whole school building and children and teachers and community.
Yeah, I don't think it's that hard.
I don't think so.
I mean, what do they even do? Just sit around in their office, put their feet up?
I remember from high school, all my principal used to ever do was get on the microphone and tell someone, license plate, blah, 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 blah. Your lights are off. And kind of joke at the end. I hope you have a die-hard battery. So yeah, well, maybe they do more than that since I graduated from high school.
Let's get into it. I'm Roberta Langer-Kang, Director of the Center for the Professional Education of Teachers and co-host of Teaching Today.
I'm Charisse Holloman, co-host and Professional Development Advisor at the Center for the Professional Education of Teachers.
We're so excited today to have with us three amazing New York City school leaders. Please welcome Paul Gumina, the principal at Renaissance High School for Musical Theater and the Arts in the Bronx. Welcome, Paul.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
And I guess we say welcome back to Candace Hugee, who is the
welcome back.
Please.
I had to do it.
So Candace is the principal at the Urban Assembly School for Collaborative Healthcare in Brooklyn. Welcome back, Candace.
Hello. Thank you for welcoming me back home.
And last but certainly not least, we're so happy to have with us Vanessa Williams, the principal at IS 141 in Queens. Not only do we have Manhattan from TC represented, but we also have the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens. What's up, you guys? All four boroughs.
Roberta, did you welcome Ms. Williams?
Welcome, Ms. Williams. I said your name, but I didn't say welcome. So welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
We're so glad to have you.
So Roberta, since we talked about not really knowing like what it is that they do, maybe we should have them start off by telling us about their journey and about their current roles and maybe how they became a school leader.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Vanessa Williams. I am the principal, very proud principal of IS 141, the Steinway in Queens. I'm in year 22 of service to the New York City DOE schools. I started in 1999 as an ELA teacher. I then, yes, ELA, we go far and in many, we're everywhere, ELA teachers. I then became I had a very interesting out of the classroom position called school coordinator. I won't even go there describing, I was kind of a jack of all trades. I did a little of this and a little of that. And then I became the assistant principal. I was assistant principal for 10 years. and I'm in year 5 of my principalship.
Wow. Thank you, Vanessa. What's one of the most surprising roles that you've had as a principal, one that you didn't expect?
Jack of all trades, sort of. You get pulled in many different directions, and you have to maintain relationships with surprising groups of people that many didn't know deals with the inner workings of the daily business of a school. So that was the most surprising thing for me.
Thanks.
So I've had a semi-interesting journey as well. So you started in 1996. I started in 2006. So that means I'm on year 16, I guess going into year 17 in the Department of Education. I actually started as a school aide. So I was a school aide, I was a para, I was a teacher, I was a dean, I was an AP, and now I'm a principal. I've been a principal for the past 6 years. So I've been from the lunch lady on up. And I think that actually my most surprising, but it's not most surprising, the job that I enjoy the most as a principal is lunch duty. Lunch duty will give you all the tea. Lunch duty will give you all the like cool points you need with the kids with Uno. And lunch duty is where you really get to see kids for themselves. And you really get to be able to anticipate what's going to happen for the rest of the day because you can see potential beef growing. So I definitely recommend everyone to check out your cafeteria when you get a chance. It will tell you what's really happening.
Wow. From the words of the lunch lady to the principal, lunch is where it's at.
Hey. Yeah, that's 2004. Actually, no, that's a lie. That means I'm on year 18. Sorry, I started as a school aide in 2004. So yeah. Oh goodness.
That's when Candace says, "I know exactly what you should be doing in your job," she means it.
I do. I process payroll, everything. Yeah.
So thanks for having me. I guess I'm in year 16 now, all of them here at Renaissance. So started teaching math. I also had the pleasure of teaching a chemistry class my first year because the principal at the time asked me to, and that was a nice experiment, but I'm glad it passed. Oh, listen.
See the experiment, chemistry experiment.
Yeah, no, I get it. That's what you English guys do, right? Like puns and word plays. Isn't that an Englishy thing?
All day long, man.
Yeah, it's not for me. But yeah, so then I was an assistant principal here for 10 years. And I worked with, no offense to any of you all, but I worked with, I think, one of the best principals I've ever encountered and learned quite a bit from her. And then when she retired last year, it was kind of a transition to get, for me, it's been, and I'm sorry, Candace, I do disagree. The lunchroom is terrifying for me. It is just too loud and there's just, it's nice to see everyone having fun, but it terrifies me.
One of the things that you all have in common is that you were in your schools before the pandemic. You saw them through remote instruction. You saw them through the in again, out again, in again, out again. And now through this whole school year that we've been able to stay in school, but with some bumps along the road. So my question is, are we back to normal? And if not, why not?
I don't know about normal, right? Like I'm thinking more of the word, like of stability and kind of flow and like cadence to the year. Normal to me is a bit too subjective. And I think that, schools have always been a super stable place for students and adults, right? Because I think a lot of this conversation we have is student-centered, which is important. But I've noticed this year that there's many adults that are in a tough place as well, socially, emotionally, all of that stuff. And I think this year was not very stable. I think we were up and down, in and out, and everyone was just a little bit kind of fearful. So for me, getting back to a place of stability would be kind of what I would like, moving forward, is that even though you're not here, you're still part of our school community. If you have COVID, if you're out sick, whatever the situation is. So really trying to provide that stability in different formats.
I don't think we're ever going back to normal. The normal that we knew is gone forever. And we're going to adapt and change with each and every year until I retire. That's what I believe. Because yes, the building was open every day, so that was normal. But in January, when we had at my school 78, 92 cases a day, kids were absent. I had 400 kids absent every day. The parents were like, well, what's going to happen? And I don't care about their attendance, but I need to save my family. So the kids didn't come to school, but they were still able to go in Google Classroom and do their work. So school continued for them, but no live instruction. So I don't even know that I know what normal is anymore. I'm just going with the flow. That's what I do. I just adapt now and go with the flow. I would hope that normal means I don't have to change my program 15 times next year. And then that would be a success for me. But I don't know that there'll ever be what we knew as normal ever again.
Yeah, I had to take a pause and think of kind of like what the world was like around 2019. And I'm still searching through my like mental archives to try to remember. I think the hard thing what normal felt like before was that you were able to anticipate and be able to plan. And that's just no longer possible. So I think that removes the just ever returning back to a place of feeling like you can just like figure out what's going to happen tomorrow. But I think that schools are in a place where they are better able to manage. And I think that the new normal is like pushing your thinking and being creative. And I think that that's where we are. But to say that we're ever returned pre-2019, no. Because honestly, if it's not COVID, it may be something else. And to be honest, like what COVID did was reveal the gaps in our systems and if it wasn't, it could have been any disaster that would have rocked us. So I think our normal was a facade to begin with.
And I like what you just said, Candace, too, about like thinking back in your mental archives pre-2019. It's one of those things where like, you know, all things in history before that you remember them generally with a more positive light, right? Unless it was like a tragic event. So like, I feel like sometimes we romanticize what education was like in 2016 and 17 and, you know, the good days when I could do this and I was doing that. And then in reality, you know, I think if we were to like watch playback video of ourselves, you know, it's not really that different.
You know, we were talking earlier about, you were talking about us ELA people. So one of the things that I did for years and years and years was keep a journal. And I would write down things. And sometimes when I would go back and read things, I was like, oh, that's how it happened. Because the way I'm telling it now is totally different from what I wrote down. So I get what you're talking about with the playing it back.
We definitely have a sense of romanticizing the past. And then also like our brains can kind of skip over those traumatic events. So like I can't even differentiate sometimes like what was 2020 and what was 2021. Like those 2 years are just sort of like a little black hole. So there was like before and there's after, but that in between space, it could have been, 6 months, it could have been 10 years for all, I'm able to really hold it in my mind.
What is something that you wish more people knew about your position and what the work that you truly do?
I'll start off. I mean, you know what? It's not even about what do I wish that people knew. I wish that people realize that we're humans too, right? And that not even from like a emotional standpoint, but that if to give the benefit of the doubt, right? To allow for grace, right? I think that you have to build a culture where you are open and transparent, but also that we're also trying to figure things out. I mean, I think the pandemic kind of like as they saw. In all honesty, I think what happened over the pandemic is that teachers realized that we really don't know the answers and we really don't have any secrets, because once they started receiving all of the updates from their union before we knew anything, I think it just kind of was like, oh, so you really don't know. And I was like, I really genuinely don't know. Like this hasn't like this has been going on for a very long time. But I think that I really wish that people just realize that we dedicate ourselves to this work, but that we're also just the same living, breathing human beings as well. And when they say that they're overwhelmed, like the same applies to us. And nothing makes us superhuman. And it really does require a team, but that if, having the principal hat doesn't absolve me from having a bad day.
I mean, I would add on and say the same thing. For me, it's like the show with the title, A Million Little Things, that's what the principal's day is like, a million little things. You start with the calendar, I always start with the calendar. What's going to happen today? I have this meeting, I have that meeting. But once the children arrive, there's a million little things. And since they are the most important thing, everything else on the calendar gets pushed to later and later and later and later. So I would say that's important. I wish people knew that. I don't think they know that. I also think they don't know how many stakeholders are involved and how much human interaction the principal has to be involved in a day. And I would say for me, because maybe it's because my school is so big, I wish they knew that you kind of, the trauma of their life, once they call you and share it with you because they have to leave early or they have to take off, that's kind of left with you, that you carry that home on the Grand Central. At least that's for me. Like in March 2020, I had one of the first cases of COVID in our district. Staff member, and of course, remember March 2020, we didn't know what it was. We thought if we were in the building with you and you had COVID, we were all gonna die. So I remember getting the call, remember that when the kids stayed home, we were called back to the building. And I had to go and tell my teachers that they were exposed to COVID, which we didn't really know what it was. And that was really the worst day of my leadership life, because again, I've been here for 22 years. I know who lives with grandma and grandma's sick. I know whose children are immunocompromised. And I remember you couldn't meet in the auditorium because, you had to social distance. So we divided. We had teachers in the gym, some in the auditorium, and we have 2 gyms. And the last gym that I went to, I don't know what the teachers thought I was gonna announce. Maybe they thought I was playing some, I don't know what they thought it was, a team building activity, I have no idea. But the teachers arranged themselves in a circle and I had to walk in the middle of that circle. And when I made that announcement, oh my gosh, I will never forget their faces. So I think they don't understand. I think the world doesn't understand that, again, there's a million little things and you're the piece of your life and the piece of your life. And we kind of carry that all in some way, shape, or form, right? So when you leave here and you say, I'm rushing to the hospital, so-and-so is sick, I'm that person like, how's it going? How is your family member? And many think it's just because, hey, you want to know, are you coming tomorrow? I was like, if you're not coming, I got to cover you. But it's beyond that I want you to be whole when you come back. Because if you're not, then as the leader, I need to step in on that. So I don't think people realize that, that's what the work is. That's part of the work. Either that or I'm just smush. I don't know. I'm just softy. One or the other.
Yeah, no, I agree too. I think, it's how many other professions in the world do you need to form, 500 plus relationships and nurture and care for those relationships all the time? And each one of them, while there are some large scale needs that need to be met, each one of them is just very unique. Like you just said, Vanessa, who lives with grandma, who's got, this situation happening, and adults and students, right? And I wish people would know more that, again, I hate to make this about adults and not students, but like Vanessa said, like we're people too. The adults are people too. Everyone has like this unique set of circumstances. We have to kind of meet everyone at all these different places. We can go from having a conversation with someone who needs very specific and concrete steps and things to do in order to move forward and be successful, Whereas another person, we just kind of float out an idea and all of a sudden they're running with it and they can produce something better than I could ever imagine. So trying to figure out all of those things is something that I don't think people realize. So
I mean, I don't know if I have anything more specific to add on. It's constant. And it is like Ms. Williams was saying, it weighs heavily on you. Actually, there's nowhere to dump it. And it's just a really lonely job.
But ultimately, at the end of the day, we just walk around the building and smile, right? That's really all.
That's all you do. I think that they always say it's lonely at the top, and I think that there are CEO maybe, but the principalship I think is one of the loneliest jobs. It's one of the most isolating jobs that you can have, and I think that's one thing that I don't think a lot of people understand. There are no other principals in the school, so teachers can talk with other teachers, kids can talk with other kids, paras can talk with other paras. Parents can talk with other parents. Superintendents can talk with other superintendents. There's only one principal, and everybody wants something from you. They need their program. They need their attendance sheet. They need something signed. They need something bought. They need something. Everybody needs something from you. And there's pressure coming up from the bottom, from the ground up, and there's pressure coming down from the top. And it's one of the reasons that I have just such deep respect for principals who do the job day in and day out, because it is a really isolating place to be, but also it's filled with people who are there because they have a passion for students, and they know that the best way to serve students is by leading the school in a way that teachers can do their best work. And so I'm always pro principal. So one of the things that you guys have been sharing about, there's actually a term for it, and it's called secondary trauma. And it's when the person and the main industry that it is researched in actually is around social workers, counselors, therapists, and sometimes people in the medical field who take on the secondary trauma of the patients who come and speak with them. And that it's about hearing, it's the weight of hearing and carrying the loads of other people and not having a place for it to go. We know that as a result of the physical impacts of COVID, that we're starting to hear this terminology around long-term COVID. So we can understand that like there's this mental health criteria called the secondary trauma, but then there's also the physical health component of long-term COVID and these impacts, of these health impacts that people are experiencing long after the bulk of their COVID symptoms and their COVID diagnosis has ended. And as we've been doing this series, Sharice and I have been talking about long-term COVID in schools, some of those like persistent challenges that you would have thought would have been fixed or solved or resolved by now, but that they keep cropping up. And so we wanted to hear from you. What are the impacts that you're seeing of long-term COVID taking place in the school? We've talked a little bit already about some of the mental health challenges that our teachers and students are experiencing. I would say either like, do you want to say more about that, or what else are you noticing is a long-term impact?
And Roberta, I'd also want to add before they respond, like it doesn't also have to be a bad thing. Like it could be like a
That's right.
long-term thing that we're saying. So it doesn't have to necessarily be a bad thing.
So that's where my head kind of went, Sharice. I'm glad you said that. Yeah, I think that we're more aware of our well-being, both physically and mentally. If someone's not feeling well, mentally, it's okay to take a personal day to kind of reflect and kind of ground yourself again, just as if you're not feeling well physically. And I think often we've kind of pushed through that, especially as principals and assistant principals and administrators. I've seen colleagues drag themselves here with God knows what conditions, but it's like, what are we doing? Obviously we're here to support the students, but we have to create the structures that, whether we're here or not, can support them for a day or 2 days if we need to kind of take care of ourselves. I mean, I've been telling all the teachers, you can't support and take care of students if you cannot do that for yourself. If you're not well, you can't, take on someone else's challenges and move forward. So I think that awareness. So my short answer is awareness.
I would say definitely the use of technology. Again, before COVID, you had maybe 10% of my staff using Google Classroom with fidelity. And then when you were forced to do it, now everyone's using it. And now we can't let it go. And if you're absent, you can watch the video of the lesson, you can know where your class was. So that's definitely something positive in terms of the direction. Of course, with every kid having a device. So now you're closing the gap here in terms of equity with the DOE issuing the devices. I would say social interaction for the children. I'm a middle school. We were Respect for All school. We had all these things. And then we came back with everybody talking bad. I don't even know how to say it. It's just out of control the way the children are behaving towards each other, interacting, the things that before we could say, okay, don't say that to me. Let's sit down. Why'd you say that to me? Now it's coming to blows in the cafeteria or wherever we are. And then you're like, I remember coming back. What happened to the children? Where? These are not my children. So I would say the social interaction long term, we had to change systems. Like that's what I spent my year doing. Things that in my school we took for granted. The past system, this system, that system. We had to revise all our systems and revamp them to meet this moment. One I had to put together, I call dismissal by invitation only, like a wedding. Dismissal every day is like a wedding at my school, because all the children will come barreling down stairs, banging, screaming, yelling. I was like, what is happening? So now we have a floor warden, I called him or her, and you get your class together. We announce dismissal. It's time for dismissal. And someone says, you can be dismissed, and that class goes down with their 8th period teacher, because we have to do this in an orderly fashion. And I sent that out in a huff one afternoon when it was enough. What is this banging during dismissals? So I think looking at systems and revamping them to meet the moment, whatever the next moment is, that's long-term, like that's forever. We'll have to do that.
One long-term effect that I think my school is still grappling with, and it really made kind of like the hairs on my body stand up this past month, has been how to do blended instruction. So like with the resurge again of like COVID that we're experiencing, it's like, oh my gosh, wait, right? And then parents are asking how, okay, like my child's out with COVID, how are they receiving the instruction? And I'm like, wait, okay, we're back to this, because, you can't mandate that all the teachers, and actually at my school, we were trying to move away from the technology, not saying that it was a tool that shouldn't be used, but it was one where we found that students were hiding behind, and at times teachers were still trying to reuse some of the instruction they used during fully remote instruction, and it just wasn't working. It's not the same environment, so it doesn't translate as cleanly. But when we had the resurgence of like COVID, just like how do you create both options in a way where both sets of students are receiving quality instruction, while still only having one teacher and still trying to mentally protect that teacher as well, and still work within the confines of the UFT contract? I don't know.
But to your point, like the expectations from families has really shifted a lot, right? Because like, well, my kids could learn without being in school before. Why can't they now? And managing those expectations and DOE policy, et cetera, what you can do, what you should do, those are sometimes two different things.
One long-term thing too that just popped into my head is that this very interesting social experiment of students in high school who have never taken a Regents. So we have right now, all of our 11th graders are fully set to graduate with their Regents exams because they have waivers for everything. And in my opinion, they are not any less prepared for the world than all the other students that we've encountered, that I've encountered. I'll speak for myself over the last 16 plus years. I think that they are very well prepared. I think that they have been able to kind of not necessarily focus on such a huge and potentially traumatic event as like an algebra Regents. And they really, I don't know what exactly happened, but our 10th and 11th graders are really in a good spot, academically and socially and emotionally. And I just wonder what part that has to play, not having to take a high stakes exam. Unfortunately, some of them would not be successful the first go around. So not having to deal with the stress of that and then, remedial work. So I hope that is a long-term effect, is that we realize how ridiculous these things are.
Well, Paul, tell us how you really feel.
Culturally responsive and sustaining education was adapted by the New York State Education Department in 2018 as a part of their wide-ranging plan to meet students' needs through the Every Student Succeeds Act. This approach includes a commitment to acknowledge and affirm that students' culture and identity are valid and valuable, and that educators who cultivate cultural relevant, responsive, and sustaining spaces for learning will increase student academic, intellectual, and social and emotional growth. Our present is a result of a shared past, and our future is dependent on how we refine ourselves in the present. Developing shared historical knowledge and norming our language towards inclusivity are foundational to becoming an anti-racist culture. At CPET, we partner with schools and teachers and districts in the deep, authentic journey toward equity, including supporting educators through a personal excavation of implicit biases. But before we work with others, we start working with ourselves by seeking common ground through common knowledge and shared goals, using seminal texts to inform our exploration. One way that we interrogated our own thinking and actions was to engage in the reading of shared texts. We used Ibram X. Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist, Zaretta Hammond's Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain, Advancing Racial Literacies in Teacher Education from Detra Price Dennis and Yolanda Seeley Ruiz. And we focused our reading on developing concise workshops that are rooted in inquiry and move through an investigation, interaction, interpretation, and inspiration from these texts. We didn't want to keep all the learning just for ourselves, so we've developed our inquiry into an online course that we've called Touch Tone Texts for Equity. This online experience is ideal for both educators who are ready to delve into reading for a few weeks and for the educator who may not have the time or resources to read these texts cover to cover, but wants an experience that will deepen their own understanding of key concepts within culturally relevant and sustaining pedagogy. For more about Touchtone Text for Equity and other online courses, or to download the Centering Students Guidebook for CRSE, visit our website at tc.edu/CPET. And now, after that very, very long spotlight, back to the panel.
Roberta, we've been walking so many miles in everyone's shoes. I think we need to go shoe shopping once we get
flats, Charisse, no more high heels. I'm over it.
I'm wondering, as we're closing out, what advice might our principals offer to anyone who's pursuing a career in school leadership?
I would say form your vision and be fierce about it. Interestingly enough, this in my brain, along the way of my 22 years of service, this is it. I'm living the dream. I wanted to be the principal of the school that I worked in and helped build for 22 years. I sashay, you can tell me anything my first year of principal. I was gonna have it all, everything, because this is the dream. This is what I wanted. I wanted her office and it's mine now. I wanted the keys to the building, right? I waited for my school, much to the chagrin of everybody I know, the dismay of my husband and friends, like, what are you doing? But I wanted my school and I had to know if it was in the stars for me to get it. And so I I don't know, you edit this out, but I do love my job. Like I sashay myself here and it was all going well until the global pandemic broke out. And then during the global pandemic, I was like, someone was like, it had to be you at this moment. And I was like, thank you, because I'm trying to get through. So it's madness. And I would say my advice would be don't do it unless you really want to do it. And it sounds like wishy-washy, like a This Is Us episode, but it's gotta be in you and you've gotta love it. And you have to find the moments, the wonderful moments. Like yesterday, I was in the office passing through, I don't know what I was doing. A father was picking up his daughter and he was like, "Oh, Ms. Williams." I was like, "Hey." He said, "You are the best principal I have ever met in my life." I'm like, "Excuse me, who?" Wait, let me stop and pause and talk to this gentleman for a second. "What's happening, sir? Hi, who's your child?" And he said, "I'm not just talking for my children, I'm talking for my whole life because you," and I was like, "Well, thank you. That just made my afternoon." But just out of curiosity, what makes you say that? Just the way you understand and keep us informed. And then I was like, "Oh, maybe I'll keep this job." Right? So it's like those moments. I just feel like you have to remember, because at some point you really wanted this. Like that's how what I tell myself on the Grand Central on the way home. At some point I had to have it. And now it's here. And I feel like we don't get a chance to pause to fully appreciate it. So yesterday I was at Teachers College. 2 days ago, I was at Teachers College to kick off our Curriculum Mapping Institute. And I came back like, wow, that was the best day I had in years. And everybody was like, "Why?" And I was like, because I got to pause and think uninterrupted. There were no interruptions. Because as a principal, you just work your way through the interruptions. Walk out of your office 10 steps to the door and 50 people want to talk to you about whatever issue they have. So I just feel like at the end of it all, I lived a life of service. Did I impact all thousands of lives that I touched in a positive way? I hope to. But that would be my advice. Just know why you're doing it and avoid the distractions, because it really is going to be over before you blink. Like I know my retirement date, it's here actually on a folder. I don't know if I should show that to the camera. It says almost, and it says almost there with the year. And I really am almost there. But when I get there, you know you're going to miss it, because just like anything else, right? All the people who retire, they're excited to retire, but then they say, "Well, I did this for 30 years. What am I doing now?" So sometimes you feel like you just have to stop and enjoy it. And the only time you can do that for me is when you're with the children. Like right before here, I was downstairs talking to the cast of the play about the beautiful play they had yesterday. So that's what I do. My advice would be never go too far from the children. Okay. And don't talk to the adults. I'm sorry, say that. Don't spend your time with the adults. Okay. Find the children, right? Because they always bring it back to what we're doing this for. Even if they're mad, even if they're sad, even if they just had a fight. So that's what I would say. Always find the children. Walk your building, sit in a class, not to do an observation, but just to be with the children, and then it'll be okay. Unless another global thing. No, I'm just
So I kind of, yeah, my thinking is right around the same things of just kind of slowing down and really try to simplify things, and yeah, taking stock of where you are and kind of the process in that journey. There's this is stolen. So I stole this from Elvis Duran, who stole it from some philosopher, that, you know, it's life is kind of like a song, right? Like you want to enjoy the song. It's not like a destination that you're trying to get to an end of. And, you know, religion and belief systems aside, you know, my goal is not to get to be 55 and retire, although I'm very much looking forward to that time because I have a lot of hobbies. But, you know, while I'm doing this, like, I don't want to just in walking around and talking to some of the adults, oh, can't, you know, 10 more days, and then it's summer, 10 more days, and then that's 2 more weeks, and then it's spring break. Like, that's not enjoying the journey, right? Like, that's looking for the next time that you don't have to be here. And for me, I do truly love this job also. You know, just like Vanessa said, like, this is kind of the school that I was in the very early part of. would like to believe that I helped kind of form some of the structures and successful things that are happening here. So yeah, this is really, really something that I kind of, I take very seriously and I'm very happy to do. So I think slowing down, and I think the more practical advice would be simple is better. Like I think sometimes people equate simple with not as effective, not as higher thinking. Stealing another thing that I read or somewhere that stuck with me, in nature, when things reproduce and keep on growing and adding more and adding more and adding more. So that's cancer, right? Cancer is not ideal. In education, oh, we need to do this next thing. We need to add this. You need to add this support. You need to add this thing. There's no reason for uncontrolled growth, right? Like there's teaching practices that all of us know are effective because we've done them and seen them. The great teachers are the great teachers, and there's so much overlap in what they do. So just really kind of focusing on, that laser focused vision that Vanessa spoke about earlier. It's just, it doesn't have to be super complicated to work.
And lastly, I guess I'll just like round out prioritizing this job. I mean, I find it's fun, right? Like I definitely have my days where I'm just like, and then I'll go home and then, get on Instagram and talk to the kids, right? Or a kid like sends me in a DM, Miss. So that's where I find the joy. But, I think I'm able to, I read the news because I need to know what's happening, especially like educational sector in like New York City, but it doesn't define who I am. It doesn't define my work. Chancellors come, chancellors go. Superintendents come, superintendents go, right? But the one thing that is consistent is that you will have students, and the students come to your school because they're expecting high quality education, X, Y, and Z. It doesn't matter. For me, having been in multiple school communities, I know that I have a Tyshawn everywhere. I have a Megan everywhere. Like these students will follow you no matter where you are. And that is at the heart of what I do, who I am, why I still continue to like do this work regardless of where the school community is. And I think like the advice I would give is just like really prioritize and really stay true for like who you are and why, like what brought you to this profession. Every kind of email you get requires a response, but you can figure out when you need to give it. Every new priority that the city comes up with, it's important that you're able to know it, regurgitate it, and be able to implement it when it's right for you. But everything doesn't need to be done right now. And I think that would be the advice that I would give. And also, so as a principal, like you shouldn't jump at the first opportunity. It's important that you have a school community where it can really be your home. And every opportunity that comes across your desk doesn't necessarily mean that it's for you, but what's meant for you will be yours. So just trust your own intuition.
I would also add that this is one of the few professions that's a cycle, and every September is a rebirth. Let it go. Whatever happened last year, whatever didn't go as planned, whoever. So you get a reset. You get a reset every September. And so I would say take the reset and then go from there.
This is Teaching Today. I'm Roberta Linger-Kang.
And I'm Sharice Holloman. I want to say another thank you to our panelists, Paul Gumina. Thank you, Paul.
Oh, it was great. Thanks for having me.
Candace Hugee. Thank you, Candace.
Thank you.
And Vanessa Williams. Thank you.
Thank you. This was like a therapy session. Thank you so much.
We'll send you a bill. So, and a shout out to our post-production crew, Isaac Hodges and Katie Mills.
We think your voice matters. Send us your education questions, concerns, and promising practices, and we'll address them. Subscribe to the pod or leave a review, and definitely follow us on social where you can find us at TC-CPET or send an email to cpet@tc.edu.
And we'll be back in your feed next time with an episode on support for new and early career teachers. Until then,
Take care.
and talk soon.